upper echelon of the military and like spy groups and stuff like that. So,
Hi.
hello.
Just decided to say hi.
This is Big D and Shade from TacoYaki Anime.
Yo!
And we are back for our final thoughts for the summer season of 2017.
Interesting season.
Yeah. I've been busy, so I am far behind Shade. I only have two shows to talk about today. Today we'll be talking about a total of 7. I got a total of 9, and the very first show we're going to be talking about is Boku no Hero Academia Season 2.
Yes. Oh my goodness, this was this series, man. There's a lot going for it. It really is. I mean, it's every. I don't want to overly generalize, but I think every kid's dream of like having a superhero school, and then like legitimizing superheroes in a sense of like they're trained and they go to school to be able to be heroes and do the things that they do. In general, is just awesome. But it just the things that they do. Okay, so this season, the main highlights for this season is I don't remember his actual name, but I know we basically call him Deku. Deku basically he gains more control over his power, which I mean you figure that's going to be something that's going to happen eventually. But even like the slight change in that, because he's still not quite fully there, but he's gotten a lot better at it than he was, is just leaps and bounds. You see the improvement, you see how well he handles himself, and he can wreck if he, really puts his mind to it and everything. And it's awesome that way because, like, at this point, before, he was only, like, he'd put all the power into his fist or into his finger or his feet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's actually controlling it at 1% of the level for his entire body. But he's literally putting his entire body at a 1% level.
Okay, that's really cool.
So he's able to like move really fast. Like at one point you see him jumping along and like on pipes he's literally jumping from, his movements are a lot more assured of himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot more control. He doesn't have, like, when he's doing that, his hits obviously aren't nearly as powerful because he's limiting himself, so that way he can actually control it better.
Yeah.
So eventually he will, eventually he will get to that point where he can actually use full body and have the power to go behind it at the same time. But like seeing this step is like a huge leap in that regard, and you're like, hell yeah.
Did they compare it to how much All Might was? All Might like 100% of all his body, or
yeah, basically.
Oh, okay, cool.
All Might's like at 100% level, and yeah, he's like at a 1%.
Okay.
So that should show you the difference in between them. And even at 1%, like I said, he can still do things. He's really, he can stop people. He can, and even though he's not as strong when he does that, his hits still hurt, and they'll be felt definitely.
Yeah, that's why I'd ask about it, because like some of the stuff that All Might did was like super duper crazy, and then some of the stuff that Deku did was also crazy, but not to that level. So I was just curious, like, was All Might holding back a lot, or yeah?
No, it's just that, like, his All Might's obviously more focused. Like the devastation he can cause is more fine tuned than what Deku can do. Deku's just all over the place,
like a fire hose.
Yeah, but you could consider that as like a pressure washer versus a fire hose. They'll both deal destruction, but the pressure hose will actually like fine tuned in that point where it's going to deal that destruction. So. But in this season, again, he learns more about his abilities, and all of the heroes go under tutelage of other heroes. Mm-hmm. So they actually have a day in the life. Actually, I think it went for like a week, but like for a time span, they're there. They're learning what heroes actually do, what they go through, what they need to know, what they need to do, which is great because again, it gives you more of that sense of realism with it, and it brings it more in focus to what's going on and whatnot.
Yeah.
But so that ends up happening. The other thing that ends up happening is people they get their first big bad villain essentially. Well, not their first, but like the one that Deku and them are. This is their focus right now because they call him the hero killer because
Sting?
literally that's what he does. Yeah, Stain.
Yeah, he came back. Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah. He came back, and this time they actually ended up apprehending him. But there was some tough lessons involved in that,
Okay.
and I won't go into huge details with that
Yeah,
because.
because I'm like, I really want to watch that one.
Oh yeah, no. But that's big. The other big thing that happens in this one is they have, I guess you can kind of say before summer vacation, they have their finals.
Uh-huh.
And of course, just like most schools, there's a written final and everything. Their practical exam,
Uh-huh.
they were under the impression was going to be dealing with robots. But because of all the things that have been going on in the school,
Yeah.
the things with the hero killers, the things with the villains or the League of Villains or whatever
Yeah.
attack and all that, the principal decided that instead of just a regular, beat 'em up or whatever dealing with robots, this time they paired up each of the kids, so each of them in pairs, and they had to face one of the teachers.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah. So basically, the teachers were given they had like weights on them, so that way they weren't nearly as mobile or agile as they normally are. So they kind of gave them a little bit of a handicap. And the way that the students could win was one of two ways: either they had to flee, so they have to learn that sometimes removing themselves from the situation is the best course of action.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that they were given a pair of handcuffs, and if they could put the handcuffs on the teacher, they would say that they have apprehended them basically, and they
Okay.
would win. So those were the two qualifications that they had to do. And of course, what they did is they teamed the students together who they thought were going to have the most trouble. So they didn't really put together people who they thought would be like work well together. No, it's because they're thinking when they pair up with other heroes, because other heroes can join in at any point in time in the actual outside in the real world or whatever.
Yeah.
And they want them to be able to work with anyone that they come up with.
So it's
You have
two
to-
students and a teacher versus
two students versus a teacher.
Okay.
And the
Okay, that
students
makes sense.
have to be able to work with each other in order to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
And that means they have to plan, they have to figure out their strengths and weaknesses, and figure out a plan of how they can actually carry it out one way or the other. And, again, a lot of those pairs were, very interesting to see. There were a few that ended up failing on it.
Uh-huh.
But, of course, the most interesting of them all, Deku ended up being with the Explodey kid.
Again.
They paired them up. But guess who they had him going up against?
All Might.
All Might. Uh-huh. Yeah. All Might was their and literally he had I want to say, because each of the teachers had basically they had metal bands on their wrists or whatever.
Uh-huh.
All Might had 3 on each arm and then 3 on each leg. And his speed was still just phenomenal.
God.
It was insane. It just I don't want to say a whole bunch about it, but in the very beginning, Deku's trying to get with the kid and be like, hey, we need to figure this out. We need to have a plan, and of course he's ignoring him, or he's telling him to shut up, and of course there's no real good communication, no, they're working together, they're just all over the place. They were in the middle of because they were doing these exams in the mock city or whatever.
Yeah.
From the entrance on the other side where they had to escape, All Might was there, standing there waiting. He got bored and he tenses up, leans back, and does a punch with enough force that it actually hits the kids in the center of the city, a good, I don't know, 5 or 6 at least blocks away from where he was standing, and actually pushes them, throws them back essentially. And they're just like, what the hell? I mean, it got crazy.
I can't wait.
But I mean, and you get to this point at the end of the final episode, they're all going to the summer training camp essentially, and it's now the guy who kind of runs the League of Villains is focused now, like laser focused on his want to destroy All Might. That is his goal. I mean, you know how All Might has been, yeah, he can't do quite nearly as much as he used to,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I don't know. And that last episode, when because the leader of the League of Villains ends up meeting up with Deku, and they're in a mall, and they're sitting there, and you just see him with his hand around Deku's neck, like squeezing like ever so much. And I swear that entire time in the episode, I had my hands clenched. I'm like, oh, don't you dare, don't you dare. Ah, no, 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 no. I mean, because this is the other thing about this anime is that they don't have those type of boundaries.
Yeah.
Because people will get hurt.
Yeah.
And oftentimes even like seriously hurt. To the point of like, what's his name's brother got attacked by Stain and is now paralyzed. That's like, wow, that's not usually, especially in this type of anime, that's not usually to the extent you see that a lot of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like you actually see people can actually get seriously hurt and then they're out of commission. So, the fact that he had his hand around his neck and I'm just sitting here going, oh, don't you dare. No, 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 no. So yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this. I mean, it's got a lot of cool powers, abilities. You got a nice tension with the bad guys and the good guys, and you just, of course, it definitely appeals to me because, again, this is another underdog story. Deku's definitely the underdog of this whole thing. And to see him strive and to see him succeed, to see him accomplish what he does is just awesome to see. So
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to get back to it. Like I said, this season's been rough, but yeah. The next show we're going to be talking about is Restaurant to Another World, or Isekai Shokudo.
Now, I consider this one kind of like I don't know, it's an interesting, it's almost like, because I couldn't watch Food Wars this season, this is like a nice little prelude replacement for that, because here's a guy who and I will say this, they like, I don't know if maybe they just haven't come out with it yet, but they abruptly end the season. So I don't know if they're doing it in like Durarara did, where it's doing it in split
multiple
up
cores.
Yeah, multiple cores or whatever. Because I don't see how it could have ended where it did. I'm like, no, y'all. I know how most animes end, and I know how some of them can be like abrupt or whatever. But this one didn't even seem like it ended. They were like just kind of gearing up for a bunch of stuff, and then now it's just they haven't gone past episode 12 from what I can tell. So I'm like, the hell? So there might be one more, or they might be breaking it up into cores at this point.
Okay. Hopefully it's not like some shows like there's one show they got
lost the funding for or whatever.
Yeah, like they just get canceled because like they're not doing
because
well.
There's nothing, like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing absolutely amazing about this show, but it's still, to me, a good solid show, because it takes so many different people and kind of throws them all together. Like their common link between all these people is this restaurant.
Yeah. This
restaurant that originates here in our world, and the door to which every Saturday will appear in this other world and different parts of this other world. Mm-hmm. So it's only one world that it's going to, but it's different parts of this other world that it will appear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it's super interesting in its own way, because they have the dragon. It ended up being another dragon.
Ooh, cool.
And then you end up finding out that these dragons are actually they've been around for almost forever, basically. Mm-hmm. Like long before most other species had been around. And they actually had this like battle with another hugely powerful being that almost destroyed their universe. And it was like 3 or 4 different dragons that had teamed up and finally managed to take it down. So I think one of them ended up dying in the process of it. And but yeah, like the second dragon you end up coming across is, because the red dragon's a dragon of fire, then you have the dragon of like ice or water, basically. This one was the Black Dragon, Dragon of Death. And because when humanity on their world first started to come about, with her being around, her presence was literally killing things. Just her like aura essentially around
Yeah.
her. So she ended up going to the moon, their moon, and basically just stayed there. Like she can't die,
Yeah.
but literally she's just there because she doesn't want to kill anything. But then that's when one of the door actually appears for her on the moon, just weird as all get out. But literally it appears for her on the moon, and she actually comes in, which was funny, of course, because she didn't know anything about like what was going. Like she basically downsized herself into a human form, but of course, just like the other dragon, doesn't really think about anything else decorum wise. So she literally walks in, and the chef walks out to say hi, and is just like looking away off into the. Can you put some clothes on, please? She's like, oh, yeah, sure, and just throws, basically materializes it, and puts it on, kind of cloaks herself in like shadow essentially. Um, but then she ends up becoming a basically a waitress there.
So in human form, does that like death aura not work?
I think it's because either the human form is it won't work, or humanity itself might have evolved to the point where now like her presence is not enough to do that anymore.
Okay. As
Or it's
soon as you
like,
said the door appeared, I'm like, no, don't kill
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. No, she's able to actually go in, and everything's fine. Though it's funny, she's so, because she has spent so many like centuries on the moon. She is so disconnected with the rest of the world and
Yeah.
everything going on. You know, she doesn't. Her way of doing things is not necessarily like what you would think would be normal, I guess, for the most part. And she usually doesn't like to actually talk. She'll usually actually, and it's sometimes, it's funny is the reaction some people have. She'll actually input her words into their mind.
Ah,
So she's
telepath.
like telepathically communicating with them, and she'll look at them like, or they'll look at her like, did she? No, never mind. I want food. We're gonna get food. It's fine. You know, and it's like, all right, whatever. But there's like so much because they keep adding different people, different monsters. There's, people from the desert area. They've got fairies and pixies coming into the restaurant. They've got elves. They have like heroes from like their long forgotten, like it's just so many different things, and they're coming together, and to see how they actually all fit together and how they mold and how they're communicating and what's going on. There's a prince of the desert area who likes another. There's a princess who
Uh-huh.
comes into the restaurant from another continent
Yeah.
in that same land. So he knows of her, and he's actually interested in her, but he doesn't have the courage to actually come up and actually talk to her. So there's like kind of like a love story going on there just a little bit, and like the guy's sister keeps like egging him on, and then gets all pushed out of shape when he doesn't do something. She's like, you were supposed to talk to her. Why didn't you talk? I'm trying. You didn't even go up to her. Give me time. I'll do this. This will happen. So I mean, it's just there's a lot going on, and it's very interesting to see how it all fits together. And it's all focused around food for some weird, strange reason, but that's the case. It is. This guy brings the cuisines from our world over to their world, and people just love it. And then like he'll usually, if someone doesn't know what to order, he'll usually ask what they normally eat, and then he'll actually come up with something that actually is equivalent, or from our side to their side kind of thing. So
Yeah.
because like there was harpies that ended up coming into the restaurant,
Uh-huh.
and they usually eat raw fish. So he actually came up with, there was a recipe for something, I don't even remember what it was, but there was a recipe that he came up with, and he's like, okay, here you go, and they just absolutely loved it. Like, oh, this is amazing, and then that's where it kind of reminds me of Food Wars, because then they start describing the food or something, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you did it like this, oh, that's just, oh, it's delicious, oh, and then it's funny because they even made comment to themselves saying that whenever a new person comes in, the next time that they come in, they're always ordering pretty much whatever it is that they first came and ordered. So now that ends up becoming like their name. So like one of them's like beef
Ah.
stew, the other one's like parfait, another person's like curry bun. So it's like all these different people, but people know them. they know that they're all from the same world, but they don't necessarily all know each other where they're at in that world.
Yeah.
But because of that, they just name themselves with whatever it is that they normally would order whenever they walk into the restaurant.
That's cool.
So as it's a fun little adventure. It's I think it has a lot of potential. I'm hoping they're going to go forward with it more. But I guess we'll see. Again, I don't know why it's only on 12 episodes right now. And it seems like they kind of just abruptly just stopped. Like, I think for the last week and a half, I haven't seen any new episodes come out. So I'm hoping maybe it's just a core that they're going to continue on with, like maybe a season after next or something. I don't know. Either way, again, it's interesting. It's really worth a watch.
All right. Yeah, I really liked it when I started it. So I want to go back because sounds like some pretty interesting things happen.
Yeah.
The next show we're gonna be talking about is In Another World with My Smartphone.
There, another one with another world kind of thing. I don't know. Okay. Obviously, you can tell based upon the picture, even that you have up here. This is definitely a harem anime. And it's funny too because the last episode I watched of it, they actually made comment to the fact that someone actually has the ability to see the future. Maybe not like exact, but at least certain details and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they made comment about the fact that in the end, he's going to have 9 wives apparently. So it's like, okay, well, interesting. This is kind of like almost one of those guilty pleasure animes for me to watch.
Yeah.
It's like I when they're focusing on the fantasy aspect of it, and the things that he does, the things he learns is, he manages to learn a magic that allows him to do crafting, and he ends up crafting a gun. So he actually introduced a different technology into this world completely.
Yeah.
But then he made it to where he took the magic from that and then basically made it to where it. And I know I don't remember where I saw this before, but I kind of laughed and was smiling when I saw it. He actually made it to where it auto reloads itself. So like it's a revolver, and after he's done firing all the bullets, the shell casings will disappear, and he has a bag on his hip that has replacement bullets, and they'll automatically jump into the gun and replace. So he can just keep firing as long as the bullets are inside that little pouch.
Okay.
I was like, that's kind of cool. But of course, it's an anime. It's kind of a they're not nearly as serious in this one, so all those bullets are like rubber bullets essentially, but still he doesn't want to kill anyone, but it's kind of funny the fact that he actually was thinking about something like that. And then there was a creature that he ended up like he wanted to use its abilities, but he had to defeat it. So what he ended up doing was he learns a spell, which is kind of like his signature spell, called Slip, where literally it will cause the person to slip, and he ends up
I thought it was some kind of stealth thing.
Yeah, no. He ends up enchanting one of his gun and for the bullet to where it will cast Slip, and then when the Slip's done, it will recast Slip, and it'll just keep recasting. So the creature he's trying to get under his control or whatever said, "Well, you have to defeat me." He's like, "Okay, so 1 sec." So he pulls out the gun, does the spell. And he goes, "Okay, I'm ready." And they're like, "Okay, begin." And he fires the bullet at the ground. And for like the next, I don't know, however long, at least a couple hours, that creature just kept slipping. He'd let itself slip. And eventually he's like, "Okay, enough. I'm done. I can't do this anymore." And they're like, the creature's like has like that star thing above it because it's been like dizzy slipping the entire time.
It's like
for like hours on end.
It's like Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Yeah, basically. And it was just like, wait, okay. I don't know. It's like, and the fantasy aspect of it, when you see all the spells he does and the techniques he has and the fights and everything, are great. Love it. The other aspect of that, obviously being the harem aspect of that, is sometimes a little much. I'm just like, okay, come on. Just can we just move on? Can we okay, we're going to be here for a while. Okay. And then it's like, okay, now we're back to the other stuff. Awesome. I'm on board. Awesome. So, I mean, if you can find it in yourself to look beyond the harem aspect of it, the love interest stories and the, oh, I want to kiss him. No, I want to kiss him. No, I want to kiss him. No, I want to kiss him. The rest of it is great. It's even at one point he ended up fighting a dragon because a dragon started attacking a town. Mm-hmm. And they what was it? A dragon started attacking a town, and he ends up finding out that normally that doesn't happen a lot, but every now and then one of the young ones will get it, will break away from like a nearby mountain range and go and attack a city just to because it gets hot blooded essentially. And he ends up defeating the dragon with the help of his friends. And the elder comes along, and everyone's just like, "Oh, it's an elder." And he literally has like a conversation with the dragon, like talking to it, like we're talking right now, basically.
Yeah.
It's like he's like, I just want to tell you, I completely understand, but you really need to kind of rein it in with your young ones, making sure they don't attack towns. And he's like, yeah, no, I will make sure that we don't have an incident like this happening again, And by the time the dragon leaves and just leaves, the everyone around him is just kind of like slackjawing. And at one point, someone's like, "You know what? I don't even know why I get surprised anymore about the things that you do, because you just do them, and we're just okay. Let's just move on, So even at one point, there was an army of undead that were attacking, and he ends up taking out his phone, looks at it, goes, and it actually brings up in the area around him where like a pinpoint for each of the undead that were around the building that he was in.
Uh-huh.
And he ends up enchanting his phone, casting a spell where it multiplies a spell. He targets each of the thing that's targeting on his phone, and then releases a spell, and all of a sudden, like all these circles of casting spells appear in the air above each of these undead based upon the targeting he had on his phone.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like light spears come down and just smite each and every single one of them.
That's cool.
And he's just like, and they're all just like, because everyone was worried. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? There's so many of them. And he's like, hold on, pulls out his phone, does that, and everyone's just like, wait, did you just? And they're like, they look outside, like, yep, they're all gone now. Okay, moving on.
It's like, I'm glad he has the GPS from God, because if you had regular GPS, it'd be like 10 feet off. You'd completely miss and everything.
That is entirely too true. Oh my goodness.
That's so funny.
Oh yeah, and then at one point he ends up like actually opening up a portal and visiting God again, and because he asks him his advice on all his love interests, I guess. So it was just quite comical and interesting just to see in general. But again, the fantasy aspect of it and like everything else that he does is always it's fun. I mean, I look at that as like the guilty little pleasure, because I'm like, it's almost, he's just like OP as all get out. But at the same time, it's just, it's fun and funny to watch, especially in that situation. It's just the love interest cycle harem story that just like bogs it down, at least to me. To me, it does. I mean, anyone else might not see it that way. They might actually find it interesting or cool. But anyways, that's my.
Okay. But yeah. I would say not knowing like how much they're getting into the whole harem stuff is like one of the very like most of the anime that I first got into were harem based. So it's like Love Hina, Tenchi Muyo, and stuff like that. So it's like I started anime watching harems. It depends on like it depends on the characters in the harem. So I'm like, from Tenchi, I love me some Ryoko and I hate me some Aika. But in this show, it's I don't know. It's like I know there's the two that remind me of Rim and Ram, but I haven't met everybody else, so I don't know. It depends.
It's not. They definitely have a wide variety of girls. Like it's not just one type. It's not just one. They each have their own quirks. They each have their own style, personality. So I mean, it's definitely nice in that regards, because you don't get bogged down, or you don't start. You can actually differentiate between characters, because you can actually see which each one of them are more or less, what they do and all that.
Yeah.
So, but. It's interesting. It's funny. It's fun to watch. It's just you got to get through that harem stuff to get to the good stuff. So
okay. Cool. It sounds. Hopefully, it gets another. Well, is the story over?
It just. This one, the story is not over, but they did end the season. Not like with the Restaurant to Another World, where that just like abruptly just cut. This one is actually. they ended the actual season, and it seems like they might go for more on that. So
Okay,
yeah, I am
cool.
curious to see how it's gonna go. So, but we'll see.
All right. Well, the next show we're going to be talking about is Knight and Magic.
Now, this one is everything that I wish that In Another World with my smartphone had been,
Uh-huh.
because it's pretty much focused entirely on the fantasy aspect of it, and it's just awesome in that regards. And this is a mech anime.
Yeah.
May not seem like it to some, just not knowing it or whatnot, but this is a mech anime, and it is. I am not necessarily one for mechs, and this is still one that I found to be really fun to watch. The main character, obviously the boy there, he terrible with names. I'm never gonna remember names, but anyways, he's very passionate, to say the least, about mechs in any sense of the word. Like, he is very passionate. So anyone I don't know, did we talk about this one at the beginning of the season or no?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, a guy ended up getting killed, got reborn, and basically reborn as this kid essentially in another world where mechs and such exist. But he retains all his memories from his previous life,
Uh-huh.
so he still has his love of mechs, and the ideas that he had in his head about mechs are still there. So he is basically taking their design and their ideas and re-engineering them and making them just so much better, and in things that people are looking at him because he's still just a kid. He's like in his teens essentially, and yet he has become this master builder of mechs, and he literally did it completely on his own. He's like commandeered builders and these dwarves that you usually build them. He's like, I want you to build like this. We don't normally do that. I want you to build like this. Trust me, it's gonna be cool. And eventually they had their skepticism, but after like the first couple of times and they see what he's doing, now at this point they're just like, okay, what do you want now? What do you want to build now? Because I mean, originally the mechs that they had were literally just like knight characters, so they were just, you could think of them as like overly grown knights essentially. They were like at least 6 or so stories tall, but literally that's all they were. They were suits of armor that could wield giant weapons and such. But he ended up, like, the first thing he ended up doing was he ended up giving them extra arms attached to their back that will come out and have these 2 staves that will then fire essentially. So he gave them essentially an idea for a gun, more or less.
Mhm.
They could all use magic staves and whatnot, but they didn't. They had to like drop their weapon in order to use that. So now they actually had the ability to do that while still holding a weapon or a shield at the same time. And then he then also gave them, instead of a humanoid looking one, he made it look like essentially a horse, but that increased its speed and its maneuverability. So he gave it like a foreleg, and then he actually had originally he had 2 people build it, but then he actually figured out a way to actually have where one person could do it, and he almost made it look like a motorcycle in a sense, like the steering controls for it,
Okay,
because
cool.
you could like shift while you're steering, and it actually would then the whole body itself would move along with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the one he ends up building for himself, he actually gave it the ability to fly. So I mean, it's like all these things, like he keeps innovating, keeps adding new things, keeps adding more, doing more things. And originally, the whole thing is they were fighting these monsters that would appear every now and then. And that's what these knights were originally designed and made for. But of course, original designs and made intentions don't always stay that way. And other kingdoms, they would use them for war. And eventually, like his design, the original design he had, where the extra arms and everything, someone ended up stealing that idea. They ended up stealing one of the prototype robots that he ended up creating for that.
Uh-huh.
And then they used it for their design, and then they declared war on outlying kingdoms. So then it became, instead of fighting monsters, now we're fighting other people in other mechs. So, but of course he was all on board with that, because he's like, well, the only way a mech should be fought is with another mech. And he was like, yes, this is great, absolutely. And then he just to say how much his brain is focused on that, is like he ended up helping out another kingdom. And they're like, well, what do you want in return? He's like, well, all the mechs that we destroy, I want all the parts for.
Ah.
It's like, really? They're like, he's like, yeah, I want to see what, because these were like a different design than his, and he's like, I
Yeah.
want to see what makes him tick, and I don't want to try to incorporate. And he started going off, and they're just like, okay, fine, 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 fine. You can have it. You can have him.
Yeah.
So it was just it's one of those animes. It's got a lot of good fantasy clicks to it. I definitely could say.
Hmm.
And
One question that I kind of have is like you know the latest Spider-Man movie Homecoming,
yeah,
and
yeah,
like the bad guy basically he became from the cleanup crew after all these like super
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
battles and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious, like in mech anime, is there like a cleanup crew? Is like in the space ones probably not. There's just debris floating all over the place. But
Well,
like,
yeah. I think anyone who's not actively involved in the actual fighting of the mechs or the building of the mechs basically then handles the actual cleanup of if someone tries to destroy their kingdom or attacks the castle or whatnot, and there's debris and rubble. I would think, but
yeah.
I mean,
So it's like instead of them like moving that stuff wherever they move it, they're just like ship it off to him. I don't know. It was just
oh
kind of
yeah, basically,
yeah. That
basically.
was just kind of
That
weird to
was
think about that.
that was the other thing too, is he ended up creating smaller versions of these robots, of like to where it was like best I could say is like almost like aliens, the little mech, the mobile mech where a person could sit into it, and it was almost
Oh
like an extension.
yeah.
So yeah, he basically created those as a way to help with if there was any damage that needed to be taken care of in like buildings or whatever, to help in construction and to help in construction of the mechs. He creates that. He created that. It was just like they're like, okay, yeah. And they even used those little mechs in a covert operation when they were trying to get inside of a kingdom. They used them as a way of because it gave them enhanced strength, enhanced speed.
Uh-huh.
So he kind of decked them out in further armor, and then just gave them as like a combat ability essentially.
That's
So it's like
crazy.
this is kids. It's the things he comes up with. It's just like he sees an issue, he sees a problem, and he's just like, oh, I can make it better. I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. And they're just like, okay, calm down, calm down, calm down. We get it. Trust me. Just stop for like 2 seconds. But I mean, again, the fantasy aspects are great. The robot, the mech combat, I enjoy a lot. I think they did really well with that. And seeing a character like this who's just that passionate about what he does and what he wants to do, you because of how passionate he is about that, you almost feel that way. It's like it transfers over to you essentially,
Yeah.
and you're just like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Oh, this is gonna be awesome, and you feel that way too, because that's the way he feels, and he
Yeah.
expresses that, and you feel that the same way. So
Cool.
yes, as far as animes this season, I probably wait. Let me look at the other ones I watched. Yes, I want to say I would put this one as like my number 2. This would have been like right behind My Hero Academia.
Okay.
So if you're looking for a good season or series to watch, I definitely would say the only bad thing, and the reason why I would say it goes below My Hero Academia, is because the pacing of it is a little quick at certain points. It's almost like they had to kind of rush through certain things to get where they wanted to be. And I would have been more interested to see where it would have gone in those areas that they would have actually taken a little more time to explain and do more with. Beyond that, it's an
Okay, and then this one, they kind of came to a stopping point. There's not like a bunch of unanswered questions.
they finished up what they were doing, but obviously there's still more
Okay.
things going on. So this is one where I put it there in the same sense as what did we just talk about?
Smartphone.
Smartphone.
Yeah.
It's the same sense as smartphone. It's like there's still more stuff going on, and they could easily go further with this. It's just a matter of whether they choose to or not.
Okay.
But yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I was interested in that one, so one day I'll get back to it.
Fun.
A lot of stuff that you said sounds cool, so
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely want to check that out. The next show we're gonna be talking about is Made in Abyss.
Ah, yes, this is one you.
Yes, this is probably one of the shows that's like highly acclaimed this season. The animation is still gorgeous. I know some people who are like reviewers and like they rate animation and stuff like that say that it dropped off after episode 3, but for me, someone who's not as critical as others, I'd say that it remains beautiful like the whole time through. I can see that as far as like not having those establishing shots in the atmosphere that they had at the beginning, because they're establishing the world, and
Yeah.
you're trying, like, it goes from like a open world and a few levels down in this vast open area all the way down to you're heading towards the bottom of this this chasm. So there still are a lot of amazing things because the hole is not like the hole is gigantic. So there's still like a large landscape that you have to go over. But I like how they kind of focus more on the character situation that's going on rather than, oh, they're having trouble in this amazing land. So yeah, I absolutely love this show. This is my #1 show of the season. Some parts hurt to watch. Like I had to like
emotionally or hurt to see.
both.
Okay.
Like, okay, so basically the premise for this show, I know we've talked about it before, but basically short version is if you imagine a volcano and you take all of the lava out, and then inside of that volcano you put all these strange creatures, all these this strange atmosphere, different environments types, and the monsters and the environments get more and more extreme the lower you get into the abyss. At the top you have this village where you have this gigantic like civilization. Really, it's like way bigger than what I would imagine a village. And you have people that are just like cave raiders, and they just like rappel down the to the like the edges of the abyss and start finding all these relics and everything, and they have this kind of economy where certain things are more valuable than others. And I would assume it's more like the rarity, because like everybody hangs out at like the top few levels, so you're always finding the same things over and over. But like the people who can get down farther, where there's more dangerous things, there's not as many of those items like in their system. So of course there's people who always like I want to get to the bottom. The only problem with that is that the abyss has this weird curse to it. You kind of lose your mind the farther and farther down you get, and at certain points you lose your humanity. Like you turn into like a and that's like the like a very very like extreme depths of the abyss. So
do they explain why that happens?
A lot of things they blame it on the curse. So then the farther you get along in the story, you want to find out like where did the curse come from, why is there a curse, and
yeah, no kidding.
Don't get that explanation in this part of the show. Like they left it wide open. Well, it's everything that happens. You're not really worried about why is the curse doing you this. You're like, oh my god, please survive. And you're like, okay, you survived this. Okay, let's go a little bit deeper and make sure nobody else dies and stuff like that. So yeah, you follow the two characters from the picture, this little girl and this little robot boy. It's a really really cool relationship. There is one issue that I have with this show. One issue alone. I don't know what it is about, like, there's some weird, like naked kids and, like, talking about putting stuff up people's butts and, like, probing. There's, like, this weird, like, every now and then they'll turn and, like, one of them's, like, naked and it's like, well, yeah, there's, like, an explosion and, like.
Butts?
Well, okay, so when they found the. Okay, so I'll go explain. So when they found the robot boy, he was passed out and like he wouldn't like turn on. Well, the girl, she's an explorer and she's like found this robot that like she doesn't know what to do, so she's just like examining it and like sticking stuff up his butt to see what happens, and like how do you turn on? It's like she's like, I dragged him here, so he's my little relic thing. So I was like, I'm gonna just basically try to take him apart and stuff like that. And I don't know what it is, but it's like every now and then they're like a character will be like, they wouldn't wake up, so I tried to stick something up their butt and it didn't work. And I'm like, why? Why do y'all keep doing this? No, that's not the first thing I would think of. Like, come on.
I'm sorry. That is the kid in me right now, just being like, every time you're like, well, they're gonna stick it up their butt, and they're gonna stick it up his butt. I'm like, oh my god.
And like the funniest.
It doesn't work. Stick it up his butt.
The funniest thing is when she did that, the first time they went over this whole thing, she was like, "Yeah, I tried to stick something like up his butt to see like whatever, and it broke off." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" So like it's still up his butt, and like the robot's like freaking out. He's like, "What? I got something stuck inside of me." And then like they explained that like later they got it out, but I'm like, were you not? Did you try to get it out, or you'd be like, "Oh, that didn't work. Move on to the next method of trying to wake him up." So like, there's like these weird things. Like as far as that goes, and then there's also these weird things about like I know the manga is like very way more extreme. Like they've toned a lot of the stuff down that I hear that's in this show as far as like child nudity and stuff like that. And I'm glad that they did that because why would I want to see all that? So there's one part where she got in trouble with one of her teachers, and her teacher like wrapped her up in this rope and like hung her from the ceiling like naked, and like it was like a 1 second clip of her like ah, and the teacher's like ah, and then it like moved on, and like that's a punishment that you get for like misbehaving in school. And I'm like, that's so weird. And like later on, there's another character who like does something similar, and I'm like, what's going on with like this weird like butthole kid nudity undertones? I'm like, it's weird. So if you take that weird like little sprinkling that they put in the show out, I'm like, this show is like 100% awesome. Like all the creatures that they find are like super unique. They have like there's this one creature that looks like it's like this big white bird, and like has kind of like these weird like monster features on it, like super long eyes. It kind of reminds me of like some of the monsters from Inuyasha, where like they have like a really long face, or their eyes are like really slanted and really long and stuff like that, or they'll have like little bumps just like surrounding their eyes, and it's just like all the monsters and everything are like super unique and super cool. And that one creeped me out the most because they had just like got away from something, and then they heard somebody like, "Oh, help me!" And I'm like, "No, don't go over there." And she's like, "Oh, someone needs help," and starts running over, and it's like, "Oh, someone help!" And I can't remember if like somebody knew what it was and tried to warn them before they got there, but then you found out that that creature's a mimic, so it was it was repeating the sound of the person that it was killing, and it used that. It's like it's eating the dude and making that sound to kind of lure out other people so it could eat them next. And I'm like, I was freaked out. I was like, oh my god. So there are other monsters that like are way more dangerous, and there's like super crazy like environments and like healing pools, and then like monsters that'll just like there was one monster that could predict the future, and it's like
accurately, or
yeah, and I don't want to. Oh god, it was so good, like how they handled that. So I am like very impressed with like the entire concept of this show. There's so much I want to talk about, but you have to see it because there's so many different concepts in the show that I haven't seen in anything else. And they, as far as the entire show goes, they left it at a good stopping point. It's basically school time and like establishing the world, and then escaping off on your own and following your mission to try to get to the bottom. And then it's like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after like huge devastating setbacks, and then the people who like just more obstacles and more obstacles, and then you kind of regroup and you're like, okay, let's try this again, and then the show kind of ends. So there ends up being more character reveals, so you're like, oh, in season 2 this person who they didn't really explain that much, you're gonna get more in-depth explanation for them. And then there's still the secret of why the abyss is the way it is, so you're like, oh, hopefully in season 2 they explain that. And then like there are people who are missing who never actually was there currently. They showed up in a flashback, but you don't know if they're actually dead or if they might still be alive. And if they are alive, they might be at the actual destination, or maybe not. There's like so many mysteries going on in this show that I am 100% ready to watch the next season. Like I hope next week episode 14 comes out, because I really want more. So It really, 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 really sucks that Amazon has this because
Yes.
it is an expensive paywall to watch this show that needs way, way more exposure. So I can't even like promote it because it's like you want to pay $15 a month for this service. Like most people are like no. So Made in Abyss, I want to say is like the absolute #1 show of the season, but it is shackled by Amazon. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Oh yeah.
that's the worst thing about it is that it's on Amazon. But other than that, it is like my absolute favorite show.
Yeah, if I could, I'd have watched it, but unfortunately, I just can't do it with the fact that, Amazon has it behind their having to be the Amazon service and having to get Amazon strike with their anime service. It's like, come on, really? Double paywall and you have to just it's ridiculous. So,
The next show we're going to be talking about is Princess Principal.
this is the other one you had.
Yes, and it's another one on Anime Strike, so go ahead. Yeah, it costs too much to watch this, but I recommend this show because it's really good.
I was interested in this one when you talked about it before and looked at the synopsis for it and everything. I'm like, this actually sounds really interesting.
Yeah, so basically this is a show about spies, basically girls who are spies. It's a lot more international than I thought. Basically each person was, let's say, the girl on the top right comes from Japan. The girl on the top left, it's from one European country, and then each of the other girls, they come from like another European country. And it's really cool how the story plays out because basically it's telling in kind of reverse like how everybody met, and so it kind of does like a step forward and a step back and like kind of jumps back and forth between time, but it does it in such a way that there's still this overarching plot that's playing out throughout the entire show. And I think what they did is basically the person who's taking the most, the person who they're focusing on the most in the next mission, they kind of go back in time to how she ended up joining the group. Yeah, well, how she ended up joining the group. Because all 5 girls are all part of the same spy group, and they're from all different places, but you don't know like how these 5 different girls from 5 different backgrounds all came to be. So like the first episode just shows all of them working together, and then each episode after that kind of breaks down how the story's moving forward, and then how this person actually came to join the group. And it's really, really cool.
Now, did you ever watch Gunslinger Girl?
I saw the first season, but not the whole thing.
Okay. How well would you equate the two of these?
I would say that
I mean, we got something similar going on here. Because it kind of seems like it's almost similar.
I would say it's something similar, but it's I think in Gunslinger Girls, did they have a choice? I think they were kind of just made, right?
Well, it was because the girls who were picked were the ones who basically they had something wrong with them and they had to have surgery and stuff done to be able to save them for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And through this surgery and through this everything, obviously very costly. So then the way to pay it back was to do the service that they were doing. At least that's what I remember it as.
Okay. Well, in this one, I don't know how much of a choice. Like they didn't explain the recruitment class, but they did show how they came to get their skills. And 3 of these characters were like at the top of their class, and the gap between them and everybody else that was in the class is so huge that before you find that out, you would think that they were like built to be spies. But it's just they want if they weren't like forced into doing this, they wanted to be spies just like to get away from their how they were growing up. Like the oldest girl in the picture, the second from the bottom, she grew up with an abusive household, and she just wanted to get away from everything. So she joined the spy camp, and she ended up being really, really good at it. So now she's basically in this group of elite spies.
Gotcha.
There's a pretty interesting side characters in this show. There were some that I wish we kind of stayed around with, because I'm like, I like these characters, and they're like, okay, that's their episode, bye. And I'm like, no, they were cool. But then you'd go into the next episode and find some more characters. You're like, y'all are cool too. So it's there aren't any really bad characters except for like the leaders of the group, like the boss, the head, like the upper echelon of the military and like spy groups and stuff like that. So,
Hi.
hello.
Decided to say hi. Anyways, keep going.
Okay, so yeah, so the story flows very very smoothly, and you end up like getting more and more attached to the characters as they go along because they kind of sprinkle backstory like in like the best way. So it's really cool, like all of the characters, and there are some parts where I get like upset because just somebody like just treats them wrong, and I'm like, oh. So it's cool that I got like super attached to all these characters, and then when they have to make a hard decision, I'm kind of wondering. I'm like, are you telling the truth or are you lying? And then it's really really cool. Like this show has really really strong characters. Like I've gotten attached in a different way to all of them. There was one character that I didn't like at the beginning because she was just whiny, but then she ended up becoming really really cool because like she kind of melded with everybody else, and she like the reason why she was so whiny is because nobody was explaining stuff to her because she kind of didn't prove that she could handle the information that everybody else knew. And once she kind of earned that respect, then she was not right along with everybody because she wasn't as skilled as everybody else, but they relied on her for her like the skills that she did have. So this show, they kind of did a more closed like the story isn't over. Like it's one of the things where it's like, hey, you're with this crew of people, and we do this mission, that mission, this mission, couple crappy things happen, and then we move on, and then now we have to escape because everything, like, crap hit the fan. And then they're all together, but they're, like, kind of like Mission Impossible, where it's like, you've been disavowed, where it's like, you can't really work for the same people that you have before, because, like, some of them are, like, either like they got killed off or they've moved, like basically they broke the group apart and like they all work in different departments and stuff like that. But the main crew that you've been following, they're still together. Like they've escaped and they've gone off. But then the new leaders still call them to do more missions. So I don't really know. It's basically the whole story took place, and then right at the end they're like, oh yeah, let's go talk to so and so. And you're like, well, I thought they were all gone. And they're like, yeah, we got a new mission. And then they just head towards another mission, and then the show just ends. You're like, everybody's fine and back to square one. So I really like the way that the show went.
I mean, do you think they're gonna have like basically you think that this first season was like the groundwork to lay, and now will there be more of like an overarching storyline involved?
Let's see. So with everything that happened, I would say, so I'm trying to think how much changed from I don't know. It's like they kind of it was a nice contained story, and basically they could just change the setting and move everybody to another city and then just have more missions. And the reason why this one was like very important is because it was kind of like the homeland of one of the characters. So we could probably go to the homeland of another character, and then that character be like really tied into all the missions and everything. But then everybody else would be just extra help and maybe cause issues and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, you can just take that whole thing, move it to another location, and then play out another great series. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, it was tied up nice and neat, and I hope there's more of it. It'd be really cool to see them reacting and them doing missions in another location. So
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Again, I'd love to watch it. It wasn't on Anime Strike.
yeah, the next show we're gonna be talking about is Yokai Apartment, or English name I forgot to put it.
I think it's just the Elegant Yokai Apartment Life is the
Yes.
English name. Yeah. So this, I didn't know what necessarily to expect with this, but I'm gonna say that whatever I expected with this, it wasn't this. It's not to say that it's bad, because it's not. It's an awesome show. Because here again, just kind of like with Natsume and with like the Ancient Magus' Bride, there's a wide variety of creatures.
Mhm.
Wide variety of creatures. And each of them have their own backstory. Each of them fit in their own ways. And it's interesting to see. It's the dynamics that you see between everyone and how things interact and how things play out that makes this just as interesting as it is. So you have the main character, the guy who he's had a rough life himself. His parents have passed away. He's been living with his uncle. He basically feels like his who would be the daughter of the uncle? Niece. Okay. Yeah, his niece basically hates him, wants him out of the house, snubs him, just being basically rude and mean to him all the time. He finally gets a chance to go to a business school, high school, for whatever reasons, a business high school. And the dormitory he's supposed to move into, because it's a private school, they all live on campus, ends up burning down. And he tries to find a place to live that he can afford to while he works part-time and goes to school. Couldn't find anything in his budget. And then ends up, by a miracle, finding this place because a little boy, which I think was the boy you end up finding later in the series too, basically directs him to this. And this place just has all sorts of creatures, monsters, people dealing with the occult, people dealing with supernatural, magicians, book collectors, book mages, there's so many different things involved. And the stories, I think, are wonderful in their own way. They're separate from this guy, but at the same time, he gets involved in each and every single one of them. And that's why it kind of reminds me also of Natsume, because it's separate stories, but they're all interconnected and intertwined with each other. And, some of these are really, like, this is one of those animes that is not afraid to throw the punches. They will knock you around emotionally as well as mentally and pull you into that. Reference being on this one is one of the boy, he ends up finding out his boy and his dog were ghosts. And the reason why they were ghosts is because the mother had killed the boy. Mother of the child had killed her son, and then the dog had come to the boy's rescue and killed the mother, but not before he ended up getting fatally wounded, essentially, and getting killed as well. So it was all very just heart traumatic, just like, oh my god, what the hell. And then you end up finding out that the god of dogs, I guess, or for them in Japan and whatnot, they end up getting, both the boy and the dog end up getting taken there, and they get put into protection by them. But because they didn't want the boy end up kind of living his afterlife just around spirit dogs, essentially, that's why they had him go to the apartment, so that way he could actually be around people. And it's the interactions with those, and it's just so many different little stories. And then the guy himself is actually end up being, like, there's hints that he has different powers and potentially really strong psychic powers that he never even knew about, but potentially because he's been living here at this apartment complex, they're now beginning to show themselves more. Because now he's around the supernatural more, so it's actually becoming more apparent to him. He does stuff with that. The book that he actually has in his hand that you can see in the picture there, his is basically a grimoire. And one of the guys who actually goes around the world collecting books, who stays at the apartment complex when he's not out collecting more books, ended up bringing that to the apartment. And when he was showing the kid all the books, that book ended up choosing him as its new master. So now he has a tome of books, and that actually has magical ability and spirits that he can call upon.
Oh.
Yeah. So he learns how to actually control the power within himself, and just all the meanwhile, like, I like the fact that, yes, you see he does have a day-to-day life and whatnot, but anytime his day-to-day life is shown, it's because something is actually happening in his supernatural life that is connected to it in some way. So even though it's just kind of a slice of life, it's got enough supernatural in it to where it doesn't bog down. So I like the pacing of it. I like the characters themselves. Again, this is another one where there's so many different characters. You'd think that there would be, repeats and whatnot, but again, there's so many different characters, yet they all have their own personality, which is nice. And then there's like one of the dudes in here I'm really curious about, and I hope they go more into him, who's supposed to be a writer, and yet they somehow, like, he knows that everyone there, or most everyone there, is yokai or some sort of spirit or something, and yet this writer, who the kid actually looks up to, there's something going on with him, but they won't say what.
Okay.
I'm like, there's something with this guy. I want to know what it is. I want to know what his deal is. What's his ability, or what he is. Is he not human? And he just looks that way. I mean, I don't know. It's weird, but it's stuff like that makes you want to watch more. So this actually, I believe, is going to for a double season on this one.
Okay.
So because they are already on episode 14 on this one.
Okay, cool.
So this one is looking like it's going to be at least a 24 episode, if not more. So yeah, this is again another good one. For me on my list, this would be my number 3 for this season.
Okay.
It's an awesome show. I really enjoyed the different characters, and I like the fact that you're seeing him grow as a person, and it's that experience that you're kind of taking with it. So yep.
Yeah, I like the beginning. I know you said it starts turning dark, so I look forward to seeing that.
That it does.
Yeah, it's another show that I'll just add to the list.
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually I will get to it. The next show we're going to be talking about is The Ancient Magus' Bride. Mahotsukai no Show.
Yes, this is one that this was just 3 OVAs. The actual series of which will be coming out this next season. But I figured I definitely wanted to watch the OVAs because I'd watched the first one when it came out, and that was like months and months ago. But then watching this, knowing that the series was coming out, I'm like, I have to watch the OVAs. Because even like the very beginning of what I watched was like it was great, and the whole thing really reminds me a lot of if you took Harry Potter and combined it with Natsume, but with a female main character.
Okay.
That to me is like basically what The Ancient Magus' Bride, at least so far. I know it's gonna go on probably like we've only just touched the iceberg, so I might even like be even close to where it's at this point. Give it another couple of weeks after it actually started to air the actual series. But these were 3 OVAs. I think that they were just kind of testing the waters to see if people were interested in it, if it had a good following for it. And honestly, if more animes out there could do something like this, that would be great.
Yeah, like very long
this
story.
No, it's like these are like little snippets. They're like showing you a section and being like, okay, is this something you'd be interested in watching? That's nice to me. This is like a way of being able to figure out whether or not you're really interested in actually watching the series. And it's also a good way for them to be able to see if the series is actually something worth going forward with. But this
So like shifting everything, instead of doing like a 12 episode chunk of the story, doing like a OVA for everything. And then for the stuff that's popular and has a following, then going ahead and giving it.
Like a short like OVA, like 1, 2, 3 episodes max, and just being like, okay, show it out there, give it its all, and see if it actually has a good following for it. And it gives the viewers a good idea of what to expect, and it gives the creators a good idea of how popular they think it's going to be. Okay,
because that's the same thing that happened with Death Parade.
Yeah.
Because Death Billiards came out, and I think it was a competition, but Death Billiards came out with the OVA.
But that did amazingly well, and it was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah,
so
I like that idea.
I think honestly, more anime companies should do that. If they have a new series they want to see if it's going to hit, maybe it's like a manga they want to adapt into an anime or something. If they want to see if maybe it might have a good following for it, bring out an OVA or something. Go like a little side story for it or something. See if people would be interested in the characters, if they like the story premise, if they like, and then you just kind of go from there. So, but anyways, Magus' Bride. Obviously, where you start in this is things have already started happening. Things are already well past a certain point. And the primary of this is you start going back and you start actually seeing what this girl's life was like before when she was a child. And that's where I say it to me, it kind of reminds me a lot of Natsume, because this kid's life was just horrible. But it's because she can actually see these spirits. She can see the things that most people can't see. And because of that, obviously as a little kid, you don't understand these things. And when you try to tell adults this and they don't see the things that you see, and they start acting as probably most adults would, oh, she's just imagining things, or oh, she's just acting out, or oh, this, and it's something that just wears on them, and you can tell. Like when I watched Natsume, you could definitely tell he was definitely just it was becoming a thing where it was wearing on him both mentally and physically, and it's the same thing with her. It was definitely taking its toll. But the actual part where you watch is a story, kind of within the story, where you see her life and then how she ended up meeting up with this guy who runs a library in the woods. And this library is actually a very special library because well, I feel like going into too many details of it, but it's a library where there's all sorts of actual creatures in there, but they're all safe. None of them will hurt her or anything. So they're all, if she can go in there and actually feel safe for once. And it was like one of those things where you could tell when she realized that, it was almost like a weight was lifted off her shoulders in part, because she could actually be in an area without having to worry about weird creatures or monsters sneaking up on her, kind of thing. Because there are good ones and there are bad ones, and unfortunately, without having knowledge of that, it's hard to tell in that regards. So. But anyways, there's that basically the whole 3 episodes incorporates her story in that one instance of what happened when she went to the library and the story of the library and how she grew from that experience that she had there, which I think is it's amazing. It's a wonderful storytelling, and it's interesting in its own because it's got a lot of twists and turns and things that you probably wouldn't even think about until it's already happened, kind of thing. And you're like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that, connecting the dots and everything, and that happens and this happens and this is with that. Everything is just it's cool. And then of course the magic aspect of that being like the Harry Potter, and like the very first episode, she's learning about magic, and you see in the very beginning of the very first episode where a place that actually sells, I guess, kind of sells magic supplies. I guess, I don't know how to describe them, but the person that she's with, who's teaching her this, put in an order, and they send it to him via mechanical bird, I guess you could say, because like they had like this whole table stacked full of magical instruments, books, and everything. I mean, it was piled high. And basically she casts a spell over it. The blanket around it encompasses it, constricts it, and then makes it into this tiny little ball essentially. And then she takes this mechanical bird, puts it in there into its rib cage, it closes up and then becomes flesh and blood, and then it flies off to the delivery.
Oh.
You see what I mean? I was like, that's freaky, but kind of cool. I like it.
Okay.
And then of course, when it actually made its delivery and it knocked on the door, did a little peck on the door, and she goes and answers it, and the minute it's sitting there flapping its wings, and all of a sudden it becomes mechanical again, and all the stuff just comes flying out on top of her. They didn't quite figure out the landing on that
That's
one.
That's what I was about to say.
But at the same time, it was still funny and kind of cool in regards to that. So I was just like,
okay.
it shows you, magic and its workings and everything like that. So I was like, that's cool. And even her companion that she has is a person who can shapeshift from human form to dog form. I'm not sure if it was I think it was a dog that they just kind of gave the ability to become human. But there's so many things going on here. But obviously, like I said in the very beginning, you're already partly way into the series. It looks like things have already been going on. Stuff's already been happening. And you don't know that until further along, and you're like, okay, this is already going on. So I'm sure honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how, when they start the series itself, where they're going to start it at. I just know that when they do, there's going to be a lot more involved that's going to come with it. So I'm hoping there's going to be more explanations about what's going on, what happened. Obviously this girl's been through so much in her life, and why she is where she is now, and getting tutelage about magic and such. So the characters themselves are great. You feel for the girl. The guy who she's with, you're kind of unsure about him, or at least I am. But at the same time, you know that he seems decent, and he seems like he's caring and compassionate and understanding, and genuinely wants to help. And then they have like this maid. I don't even know if she's human or something else, but they have this maid that cooks for them and whatnot, and tends to the garden, and helps tend to the garden, and at one point they were talking about the story for so long they realized they had actually gone from mid morning all the way to evening time frame, and then they look over and she's like, wait, wasn't there supposed to be snacks, tea and snack? And they look over and there's the maid like peeking out from the other, giving him like a glaring look of like, oh, we forgot, sorry, we'll have them with dinner, sorry, you know.
That's
But it's
cool.
like the characters are unique, they're involved, they're interesting, and I'm genuinely it's watching this has whetted my appetite and gotten me excited to see what it is that they're going to do with it and how they're going to take it. Which is why I said this is, I think if more animes out there did this, would be great. Like the season before, drop a few OVAs on this, and if it starts picking up, the next season, go ahead and start the series, kind of thing. I think that would be amazing to do.
Yeah,
So,
especially
anyways.
now since things are heading more towards streaming, I could see that you could like with broadcast television and stuff like that. I don't think that would work because
Mhm.
how would you schedule like 60 different shows that have OVAs and like
Yeah.
1 to 3 OVAs? It's like the actual TV schedule will just be like anime,
All,
all
yeah.
the anime that's coming out. But yeah, that's actually really really cool. So yeah, every time you talk about that show, I get like really interested. So I'm definitely gonna check out the 3 OVAs first episode before as soon as I can because this is I feel like this is gonna be one of the most popular shows for the next.
Yeah.
So
I'm guaranteeing you this is going to be one of the big ones that's going to come out. So
the next show we're gonna be talking about is Classroom of the Elite.
this is like a roller coaster for me on this one, because it gets interesting, then it gets kind of tedious, and it gets interesting, then it kind of drops off, gets a little dull, then it gets interesting again. I'm like, what the hell? Why? Stop it, But okay, so basis of this one is kind of like, in my opinion, kind of like classroom assassination or assassination classroom. Yeah, assassination
Okay.
classroom, where you have the different classes, and each one is given, more prestige and whatnot, and better money, better facilities, all this good stuff. Your academics are your academics and how well you do would then dictate your life in this school. The better you are, the better you get, and the worse you are, the worse you get. But they make it interesting, and I think this school is interesting on its own because they have said you can buy anything as long as you have enough credits. Nothing in this school you cannot buy, and they made a point of that by the fact that there was a guy who did not pass his test, but he was only 1 point off from being able to pass, and it brought down the whole class because of it. So eventually, the main character, the guy there, the one on the bottom left-hand corner, he ends up buying a point for the guy so he could actually pass.
Right.
Yeah, and it was just, because he even made a point of that, because he goes up to the teacher they were talking on the roof, and he goes, so let me get this straight. You said at the beginning of the school that we can buy anything, correct? She's like, yeah, why? I'd like to buy a point. And she kind of looked at him, kind of grinned, half to go, it's gonna cost you. I'm aware of that. I just want to make sure we get this so that for everyone in our class to actually pass. And it's things like that. It's interesting in the story and how things take place, and there's an underlying backstory with the main character, the guy main character, throughout all of it, where he's gone through some special training and some special schooling when he was real little, and he is like way more than what he seems. The thing about it is, though, my main gripe with this whole thing is that the main character, and there might be an actual legitimate reason, they just haven't gone into it for it, but the main character is so monotone, so one-dimensional, that it just makes it really difficult and challenging to actually get invested with him.
Ah, that reminds me of Aldanoa Zero because that character also was very monotone.
Yep, he does some really cool things, and the way he plans things out is amazing. And his way of his intellect is obviously very much so there, which makes me drawn towards him. I'm like, oh, he's a really cool character. But his one-dimensional monotoneness, I'm just like, oh my god, dude, really, seriously, something, give me something, please. The other characters around him are more interesting and engaging than he is.
Yeah.
But they're not, obviously you're with him more times than not, and it just becomes so frustrating because of it, and then all the background dealing and what he does, he actually, when people ask him about it, he'll give credit to somebody else because he doesn't want the limelight. He likes
Yeah.
to stay out of the limelight.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those characters that I kind of want to like just sneak up behind and be like, "Rah!" But then,
Yeah, yeah,
but then I
yeah,
bet he'll be
exactly.
like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And I'll be like,
Yeah.
"Come on, man."
Something, just show something, an emotion of some sort, so but it's the setup. It reminds me of so many different animes, Assassination Classroom. The characters can remind me from a couple different animes, and interesting and it's engaging to a point with the storyline, but the character himself, and that's why I had like that's why for me it ranked kind of lower on my list, because even though it's got a lot of potential, I just don't think it really lives up to it per se.
Mhm.
And it's just, yeah, like even the girl, the brown haired girl in the picture, like you end up, she's always been like bubbly and sweet and everything,
Oh, the one
and
that's trying to be everybody's friend.
everyone's friend. At one point he ends up coming across her. She is on like near the waterfront or whatever,
Uh,
and she's like a complete 180 when no one's around. She is like
oh.
dark, and she is like, she was kicking like the pole fencing, being like, that little bitch, I'm just done. Oh, I'm just gonna, and I was just like, holy, and even he was just like, and then she ends up seeing him, and she actually, in order to keep him quiet, threatens to say that he tried to sexually assault her.
I hate when characters do that.
Yeah.
God.
And even
Okay.
like goes so far as to grab his hand and put it on her breast, and just like, because he's like, you have no proof of that, and she goes, I have fingerprints now because of you. And then, oh, she just like, and every now and then when they're alone or whatever, she'll let that other side of her come out, and I'm just like, that's just wow, just. But see, at least that shows more characterization than he does.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm like completely ignored who she's doing that to. I'm just like focused completely on her.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So it's just, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and they keep alluding to more things with him, because apparently his father, whether it's not his real father or not, has actually approached the school and asked to have him expelled. And now the teacher has said, as long as you keep striving to get to class A from class D, I won't expel you. But if you ever stop or you ever don't, then I will expel you. Kind of forcing his hand in that regards. But it's like, and and it keeps showing like snippets of him in his past with like smaller kids, and it seemed like he was on like some sort of encampment or whatever, and he had like some sort of special training, it seems. And I'm just like, what was his deal? What happened in his life in the past to cause this? I
Yeah.
don't know, but I'm intrigued and curious to find out what. And I'm it almost seems like he's purposely trying to put himself out of the way where he's not in the limelight, and he's not seen as excelling as he is or probably could be. And I want to know why. But it's like they're not. They keep alluding to things without saying anything, which makes me interested. But again, character is so infuriating that he's just so one-dimensional, monotone. I'm just like, oh my god, dude, seriously, get an emotion, something. So
Okay. Well, I guess overall, kind of like how we did with all these series, is it? Of course, they probably haven't explained everything now that you've like introduced some new things into the story. But as far as like how much have they buttoned up, is like, do you think they're going to just keep on going, or?
I mean, they definitely could. They barely even scratched the surface, I feel. So it was definitely like, it was a conclusion for what they were doing at the time, but it was everything else is still like left wide open.
Okay. You think they're gonna do like an assassination classroom, where they're like, this is the first core, and then like come back like months later and then do a
Maybe.
couple more cores?
I mean, I know it's not in the next season, so they got to be doing something with it, but I'm not sure. I didn't think it was continuing like Yokai Apartment was, but I could be wrong. So
Cool. Yeah, when I watched this, I liked it. Just like how Aldo Zero had a monotone character. I'm used to like, I'm not really used to it, but I'm okay with monotone characters like that. I had a feeling that that little bubbly girl was gonna be kind of two faced because of something that happened in the first episode. where it's like she tried to be someone's friend and the girl just kind of shot her down, and then she like tried to go around the other girl to kind of like make them meet and like have lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see her like eventually breaking down, or not eventually breaking down, but like somebody actually catching her being her real identity, like real personality. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it looks pretty cool. I like the whole switch that they did at the end of the first episode, where they're like, "Ha! You thought you could do whatever you want, but you can't." So
Yeah.
yeah, I actually like it. I'm not sure if I like the switch of the teacher. She was just like completely laid back and not really saying anything, and then all of a sudden it just like dropped the hammer. It's like, these are the rules. But I'm curious to see like how, like I want to know more about that character. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely on board for watching this. This is higher up on the list as far as stuff I want to watch, because it's really, really cool. And there's a lot of characters I want to know more about. So
Yeah.
it's still going on the list, but it's like up there on the... Well, yeah, so that has been the 9 shows that we had caught up on for the summer season of 2017. We will be live again at the end of the month sometime.
I believe like what 29th, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's not near Halloween, so I don't have planned. But yeah, we should be back 29th. If not, I will post what day we will be back. See, how is next? And we talk about like 18 shows for next season.
Yeah, there was quite a few. I think between both of us there was 18, but I think I don't know. I think there was we had a lot of them that were very like crossed over between the two of us, but I think each one of us had like maybe 2 or like at least 3 or maybe 4 that we wanted to watch on our own. So
fall is gonna be a very big season.
Yes,
at least definitely for first impressions.
Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully the next season is not as
not as crazy.
Yeah, hopefully it's a more chill, laid back season. It's the holidays. Everybody should just calm down and watch some anime. I don't know.
Calm down, watch your anime.
Yeah,
that's gonna happen.
Other than the show every month for the fall, we have the 12 days of anime coming up for the channel. I'll be joining in on that again for the 4th year in a row. And I may be revamping a series. I don't know if I'll have time to do it, but I really want to. So that'll be coming out also, other than the our monthly podcast. But yeah, you can always contact us on Facebook and Twitter at TacoYaki Anime. And as always, this has been Big D and Shade, and we will see y'all next time. Bye!
I think we should have like a name for every season. It's something, because it seems like every season seems to have some sort of like theme or ongoing thing. This one just seems to be all about sequels.
I don't want to overly generalize, but I think every kid's dream of like having a superhero school and then like legitimizing a superhero